Hey folks, Steve here with another Deadly Woods video. In this video, we'll be looking at the very least, turn 9, possibly turn 10. Depending on the title of the video as you're watching it, you'll know the answer to that more than I will as I'm recording this. But we are in the last 4 turns of the game. The Germans have very much lost their offensive momentum, and we are in the final stages of the game where the Allies are trying to push the Germans back. Back to where they started at the West Wall, more or less. Right now, the Germans are sitting at 3 victory points. The Allies need to ideally bring them down to as few as possible, but they can win the game for sure by getting the Germans down to 1 victory point, for instance. Now, there's some circumstances coming up on the second to last turn of the game where the Germans have to decide, are they going to let some units be withdrawn, and then they can win with 2 victory points. But right now, the Allies are just focused on taking what they can. Really, the game may simply be predicated on Bastogne and Houffalize here. These are 2 victory hexes that are not too terribly far from the Allies. In fact, Houffalize is awfully close to maybe being lost, and and Bastogne is nearby. We're applying pressure, but the Germans have put up a stalwart defense of that area. So we'll have to see how it goes. The special rules for this turn are actually pretty short and sweet. The main thing is here that the rest of the units on the board that had been locked are now unlocked. So this includes the 17th Airborne over here. I have then the British units, the 53rd Infantry, the 33rd Armor Brigade, and then the 51st Infantry up by Liege. And those guys will want to be working their way towards the front line to help be some of the hammer that tries to break the German lines. Needed reinforcements to kind of help in those attacks. But they're kind of far away, even with road movement. It's going to take them a few action shits to actually get into the front line area. So the Allies can't afford to let up. They have to keep applying as much pressure as they possibly can to make headway here. So we can jump right into things for assets. The assets, there's really not much to cover here. The Germans still have their their artillery and rocket artillery for a while. The Allies have a lot of artillery functionally, and none of the other markers, I think, are in play at this point. So we're simply playing. We could relocate our engineers, but I think at this point we do not really need to do that. I do not think that is needed at this point. So where they're at least for the moment, is good enough. So no need to change the engineers. Then we have the replacements. Now the Germans are going to get 1 infantry, and the Allies are going to get 3 infantry and 1 armor. I think what we probably want to do is get infantry do 1, 2, 3. And then for the armor, we probably want to increase our armor. Well, let's increase our armor over here. And that's it for the Allied replacement. Not much, but it will work. The Germans, of course, have even less. So I think what they need to do is spend their 1 here, because this guy's kind of holding the line from Houffalize and Bastogne from falling completely apart. So he gets the 1 infantry replacement. And that's it for those intro steps. And now we can look at the action shit stuff, which is going to be pretty straightforward. Really not much for us to look at here. Again, the German options are very limited. They're going to have their supply checks, which aren't really good things for them. they're going to have 2 movement or combat chits, and then they have their 3 formation chit, which serves as a small reaction force type of activation. The allies have their combat or move chits, keeping in mind the asymmetrical nature that the Germans have to do one of each. The allies can do 2 moves, 2 combats, or one of each, whatever they want. And then we have the Patton or the Monty side chit that is pretty strong either way, but I think it works best as a Patton chit because you can move and attack. And so at this point, there's nothing else for us to really look at because the allies will have initiative for the rest of the game, and they did the last couple of turns. They will continue to do so until the end. So it's just a matter of what do the allies want to do first with their activation. And to my mind, there's a couple of pretty good options. I think actually movement is probably not a bad one because the Germans can't do a whole lot to fix their movement situation. So, our combats are really just going to be whenever we can get the right guys into the fray. And what I want to make sure I do is that I get these guys back here brought up, these guys brought up, the rest of these British units that are way out on the periphery can come up. I really need them to get closer to the front line. And anyone that we can get into the front line this turn, it's that much better because when we do get our combat chit, and or Monty or Patton, whichever we choose, these combats will be a lot better off after we've done movement. And it almost doesn't matter what the Germans do with their chits, if their chits come up first, because if they move, what are they going to do? They could pull back. They could try to pull back. That might work. They might try to reinforce Houffalize or something, and that's entirely possible. But I need my firepower up front more quickly is really what it is going to take. We need to get the combat factors engaged, at least to the front line, because we're really not going to get any more reinforcements for the rest of the game as the Allies. There's a very small stack of guys that will come in on next turn, on turn 10, and they'll come in the south, but they're not going to make that much of a difference. I need to get these periphery guys up because they're the last bucket of strength I can really count on to help. And the sooner we get them engaged, the better off we are. So the more I talk about it, the more I feel like that is probably the right move here. Yes, I could try to do combats. I could do some combats. That might help. That might get us, further along. That might get us somewhere. But they won't be as good as compared to if I had been able to bring these guys in. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to do allied movement. The rest of these chits are going to go into the cup. And I'll come back after we've done the allied movement. Okay, here we are after allied movement. Really nothing too crazy. We're trying to maneuver here. Next allied movement that we get, we'll probably be trying to move these guys across the river. We couldn't quite make it with the movement points that they had, but we can cross, and then these guys will still be in supply due to this road. So we'll be able to more coherently attack across the river over here. So it's definitely, the Allies are getting positioned to be able to continue to operate. It's really down to a timing thing. Like, how many combats are we going to have over the next handful of turns? We're only going to have a couple of attacks, really, when you think about it. If you figure that, depending on how the chits come up and what we choose to use them on, we've got somewhere between 3 and 6 attack chits, not counting Monty or Patton, which may have different, we may use them differently. So there's still, we basically, you could count on, 2 hands how many combat actions we're actually going to have the rest of the game as the Allies, and we need those to get Bastogne and Houffalize. That's really where everything's at. We're going to go to the cup, and we're going to see what we get. First chit out of the cup pulled is allied movement or combat. Well, by golly, I think we're going to do combat. So that's convenient. This means the next chit will have to be a German chit. I think we're going to have some pretty good attacks all along the way here. Obviously, the Germans still have their artillery for defensive purposes that we need to watch out for, but I feel pretty good um, about trying to push through here and getting a little bit closer to Bastogne all across this line. If we can liquidate the Germans in any way, shape, or form, BL1 results or whatever, the Germans aren't going to get any more replacements. They're not going to get any more reinforcements for the rest of the game. So whatever is on the board right now, the Germans need to make last for the rest of the game. And you can imagine that is going to be very difficult. We have so much strength up here that we are going to need to pull back and try to pull them down this way, and it may not happen fast enough to defend these victory point hexes. Okay, I'm going to do the combats. Again, we're likely going to see some all around Bastogne, around here, still maybe up in these areas, just to keep pressuring the Germans so that they have a lower capacity to react to what's happening, and we can inch closer to cutting off this whole sector. Okay, well, as it happens, I think last turn or the other turn, the Allies had a string of great combat rolls. This turn was actually not so great. I rolled not great across the board, a lot of no effects. I've got a couple of BL1s. One important thing is we did get a retreat over here, so we took Willits, which is enabling us to now project some stuff going on back here. The Germans could try to backslide and cut this guy out of supply, but the problem will be he's now opened the door a little bit for me to continue to move up this way. And so it puts a tough decision. I guess what I should have done is advanced like this. So yeah, there we go. That's actually better. So if the Germans want to, basically we've got the bridge, we've got that protected. We're now, inching closer to encircling Bastogne and causing problems. We're starting to hammer on here, but it's not getting very far. We did force a retreat here. I think that was a DR star result. So the Allies are making some progress. I mean, you can see it. We're starting to, supply for these units is just coming through this road line. If we can cut it off, we're going to be in pretty good shape. So we just need to keep pushing. That's all it comes down to. We're going to go to the cup. It has to be a German chit, a German action chit, not a supply chit. We pull German supply. Right now, all the German units are still in supply for the moment, so no big deal there. Going back to the cup. And we have German move or combat. Ooh, that's tough. I think movement is probably the preferred option here. I'm not sure how often the Germans will be on attack for the rest of the game, other than to try to chip somebody back. And unless they need to retake a victory point hex, it's going to be all about movement as quickly as possible to try to restore the lines a little bit. So that's what they want to try to do. So yeah, I'll take care of the German movement, and then we'll see what the situation looks like. Okay, here we are after the German movement. So a lot of the movement is just moving a hex back, moving a hex forward, and exiting a Zoc and then re-entering later. Make sure to point out, not going directly from one enemy Zoc to another enemy Zoc, but shuffling units, trying to just consolidate the line. We moved, this guy was motorized. I had him come up through here really he's not going to be motorized anymore after that, but that's okay. Trying to create a shield over these guys so that they can't just be running around. What's tough is that they could still try to focus on one of these units and force a retreat or hurt them, but because there's units in multiple hexes, they have to pick which one to attack rather than just one stack that gets pushed far away. So spreading them out, getting some Zocs out here. I'm not retreating these guys back because I'd rather be forced into a retreat than just to move them. Because if any one of these guys gets like if we defended back here and they were forced to retreat, they would have to retreat behind Bastogne, leaving it susceptible. If they retreat right now, they could end up in Bastogne, which at least I'm holding it at that point. We want to continue holding this bridge and river line because it's hard to get across. And then I've now started a general side shuffle of units being, you know, moved down here in such a way that they'll be able to continue to support um, Houffalize better, or at least counterattack if they need to counterattack it. It's awfully thin here is the one problem, but I don't really have any better way to deal with that right now. The only saving grace is they've got thick forest to the west of Houffalize here, so it makes it hard for the Allies to kind of move around a little bit. Um, and I'm just, you can see I've dropped the whole hex back. Uh, I've dropped the whole hex back so that I could pull these guys off as a reserve. Also to help them because they got walloped in a previous combat with the Allies this turn. Um, Bad enough that we actually lost some units down to their third step for SS units, which we need to keep an eye on for the end game. So they're pulling off to be safe and to come around here maybe to form a something of a reserve to help counterattack. So a contraction of the German line with the intent to hold. I need to get more units into Houffalize, but in just the short amount of movement I could allow myself without thinning the line too much, this was as much as I could afford. So the Allies could try to make some desperate attack, maybe 2-1 odds here, but the Germans could probably retake it if they did. So it's tough. The Allies need to wait for some more reinforcements to come in before they really try to take Houffalize. Okay, we're going to go to the cup, and it could be anybody's chit now. And we pull the Patton or Monty chit. Now, there's certainly an advantage to trying to do something with the Monty chit. We could select, we could have the 7th and British units do something. This could be some attacks around here, or we focus down here. And either are okay. The one thing being we get a move with Patton first. So if there's any realignments that we want to make, at least with the third corps, which means not everyone's going to get in on the action, we could try to do that. Whereas Monty, it's like, well, we got to attack with what we got. We don't get a chance to realign. And this is really the last Allied chit, so I'm more interested, I think, in a Patton activation right now, and let next turn be more Monty oriented once we get all the British into place. So I think we're going to play this, yeah, as a Patton chit. And in terms of movement, there's not a whole lot more to do for movement right now. I think doing this is probably the right move for the moment. And then everything else, one challenge is we've got a bunch of units we won't be able to attack with over here. And really same over here. It's like it's really just here is what the attack is getting us, but that could be enough to open the line. Also attacking over here will be a part of that. So I don't know. Maybe a Monty chit would be better here, but I think we want to continue to bust this up because we're so close to cutting off supply to Bastogne and just wreaking havoc on this mini bulge that we have, that I think it's worth a shot. So I'm going to take care of the combats for that, and we'll see the aftermath. Okay, well, we didn't get too far. We did hurt the Germans. We forced some retreats. A DR result, BL1 here. We forced a retreat, and now the Allies are across the river in front of Luxembourg, so they are technically advancing there. Now it's not enough to completely crack open the case here, but they did make some progress. The tricky thing was I wasn't able to use this unit. in the attack or a lot of these other units because they're not part of the third corps. So that's sort of the weakness right now of the patent shit is, I've got a bunch of these guys down here. They're kind of held up right now and they're not helping as much. So it's like this weird weak point where I don't have enough units. Oh God, I just smashed a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna have to look at my camera to make sure I fix that. There's just not enough guys all through here that can all activate at once without the big chits to attack and move forward. So that's a challenge. Let me pull the next chit, and then I will use my recording to fix the counters that I just bashed. And it is the German 3 formation chit. So I will take care of that. I think at this point, their goal is to just protect this area as much as possible and move more units down to support Houffalize, if anything. Okay, the 3 formations were easy. I didn't move a mechanized because there's just nowhere to improve my situation. I did activate the 12th SS armor from that reserve, and I'm bringing them down this way to kind of help reinforce Houffalize. It's a long way to go, but they used road movement. The infantry had moved from here up, the ones that got pushed back before, so they're trying to get back in line. And then the last chits that were in the cup were German supply, which is not a problem, and then German combat. So I need to decide, do I want to do German combat anywhere, knowing that the Allies are going to still have artillery advantage the entire time. We have no more artillery as the Germans. Doesn't make sense to try to attack anywhere. Maybe we attack here, try to beat these guys back. Maybe we attack over here and try to reduce the Allied power. Do we attack over here and try to push back the line? I think there's a couple of spots where it's worthwhile, but we have to remember that the Germans are going, or the Allies are going to get to throw 4 combat points into most of the combats wherever we're targeting because they have a differentiated artillery allotment for each corps in each area that we can usually throw in at least 1 artillery in any combat the Germans are thinking about trying. So I think that's the difficult thing, but all the priority is going to be right here in this sort of like uppercase G, mutated uppercase G shape right now. That's where all the important stuff is happening. So let me go through those combats for the Germans, and then we'll be ready to move on to turn 10 effectively. And here's the aftermath of the German combats. Nothing too crazy. Well, a couple of interesting points. The Germans actually forced these Americans back over the river line over here, and so things are kind of back to status quo along this river line. Through here, a failed attack. Just generally around here, not much going on. A BL1 result here, which kind of makes things a little dicey. We tried to attack through here and got an AL1, so that was a real bummer. We wanted to force these guys back. That didn't occur. But then here we did get a retreat, and we chose not to advance after combat because that would simply expose these guys to being walloped, and we want to keep a hold. Actually, the more I think about it, I think we do want to advance after combat. No, we don't. It's so hard to say. I'm going to leave them not advance after combat. It's all kind of tricky because I could put them in a kill box where the Allies have a 3 hex to 1 hex attack and probably beat these guys up. But I reduce their ability to attack if they come into just here, which forces them to attack the sides, which isn't as good. But if these guys retreat, they go back to Saint-Vith, which at least they can hold. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird decision there, but I think we're okay. We want to keep everybody in good order here so that we can continue to shift units down to the areas of importance. We can give up a lot of territory over here. It doesn't matter if we pull back in the north at this point. We can afford to do that, shorten our line, get additional units into Houffalize or near Bastogne, and that'll maybe keep the game open for the Germans. But that's it for turn 9. So we would be going into turn 10. So let me get the action chits ready, and we'll talk about the concerns for turn 10. Okay, so let's talk turn 10. This is the last turn for reinforcements for the Allies. So the chits, which I'm just going to show down over here really quick. The Germans just have move or combat, rather. They're 2 supply checks, so that's it. The Allies have their move in combat, move or combat. The Patton, Monty Chit, and reinforcements, and these reinforcements really aren't going to do a whole lot. They're very minor. So we're coming down to the wire here, and the Allies really need to try to get, uh, they really need to be trying to get as much as they can in place. So I think the very first thing that they need to do, absolutely need to try to do, is movement. There's a couple more adjustments that are going to be needed for any combats to actually be successful, or they're most successful that they could possibly be. So the rest of these will go into the cup, and we'll go from there. The moves are going to be pretty simple. I'm going to do it off camera just because I need to do some calculus on where these units are going to move into. But for sure, we need to make this movement so that we can determine where to go. This might be a good turn for the Monty Chit instead of the Patton Chit, because we're going to really need to use the British to push through a couple of these important places and make some headway. A couple of important attacks probably around here, 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 and even down here if we can manage it. So I'll do the movement, and that's the goal of the Allies, is to basically be in that mode of operation. One thing I forgot was replacements, but suffice to say, I made some over here and in a couple of various small places. The Allies get a little bit less replacements this turn. They just get 2 infantry, 1 armor. But I think this is the setup now for this turn. I don't think there's much to bother with down here anymore. Within these last couple of turns, I just don't think there's anything to be gained. The Germans are probably not going to be able to ever take Luxembourg. They could try at some point later, but I don't see it working. So we might try to push these guys back again, but that's really all. But you can see I sort of slid this guy over a little bit so that he's projecting some Zocs. We're going to hopefully be able to smash through here and get in a Bastogne. The British are set up to take this hex so they can get set up to attack later into Houffalize. And then these guys are going to help push towards Saint-Vith. A couple of these guys are getting left behind because they're not allowed to be further than 3 hexes from the entry hex J. So, it's a little bit less power for the Allies coming down from the north. But I think this really is as good as it's going to get. This one guy couldn't get into this hex because of movement issues. But otherwise, Houffalize is definitely under threat. So all things considered, this is as good as the Allies are going to get it. It's going to come down now to the rest of the chits and what comes out, and if they get combats and strong enough combats to really make it so that the Germans can't respond. I think it is awfully close in the game right now because the Allies are on a limited schedule. They only have a little bit more that they can do, and then otherwise, they have to. They have to lose, right? And that's the thing. They got to take something. And next turn, we're going to get into the SS withdrawal decision for the Germans. But right now, the Allies, what they decide to do really doesn't change. They're going to keep pushing where they need to push and act where they need to act. So we'll go ahead and pull the next chit and see what is the next thing that will occur. And we pull the Monty or the Patton chit. And this is a difficult decision because I really could see this being either or. This might be the right time to do the Monty chit because we could activate, all of the 7th and the British for an attack, and there's enough of those guys on the board that could be a significant attack. So I'm thinking we may want to use this as the Monty side. I'll set it there. I'll take a look at the map a little bit more, and then I'll go ahead and execute it. If I change my mind, we'll talk about it when I come back. Okay, here we are after the Monty chit has been played. The main things that really occurred here is we did take the hex next to Houffalize with a retreat, so we are forcing the Germans back. We tried over here, got an AL1 result, which is too bad. And we tried to take Houffalize proper, and that didn't really go anywhere either with an AL1. But the main thing is a lot of the German artillery has been used up. Not all of it, mind you, but a lot of it. And so that should help us through the rest of the turn as we get another combat. When the next allied combat chit comes up, we're going to hopefully be able to have a decent attack on Houffalize proper and maybe have cracked this line a little bit more as we go and have had another shot at getting closer to Saint-Vie. So that's it for those chits. Now the next chit has to be a German chit, and we'll see what that looks like. And it's a German supply chit at the moment. Everybody is in supply for the Germans, so no worries there. And we'll pull the next chit. And Allied reinforcement, which really is not much to write home about. We could, let's see, have them come in at C and go 1, 2, 3, and then end up like that to reinforce, or be prepared to go, I guess up here is probably the better option. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the funny thing is, and I just realized that some of these guys up here might actually have supply problems. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, they're good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, he's still good. Really, the Allies kind of need to take this town at some juncture over here, but kind of won't matter by game end, I bet. Just means these guys are going to have a hard time advancing further unless it's, I guess, this way towards Bastogne. But there you go. Anyway, yeah, so there you go, making progress. Oh, I'm sorry, the that chit couldn't have come up because the Allies chit couldn't have happened. We need to use the German chit. I'm sorry. Yeesh. Okay, so now we've got a German move or combat. I mean, I think right now move is probably the best option. So we will need to do that because combat won't do a whole lot for us, but we need to reconfigure the line. So the Germans are going to take care of that. Okay, so with the German move, I'm starting to peel off some units from down here, try to make our way up and try to support. It's probably too late. I should have been doing this earlier, but I don't want to let the Allies have too much free reign down here. Not that there's any victory points, but they can sneak up very quickly across roads and start cutting off supply lines. So I'm trying to peel off some guys, rearranged over here, put some more guys into Houffalize. The only problem is, I'm realizing that, with next turn being where we have to potentially withdraw our SS units, we may be missing defenders in certain hexes, and that could make for a very weak line. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we retain something of a defense when I guess I'll do an emergency retreat this way. How else do we make our ground around here? It's a real problem, all things considered, and so just trying to make sure we don't have open hexes is really tricky. If we do withdraw, we don't have to, and we can decide whether or not we're going to withdraw, but we have to be prepared for that decision if we're going to do it or not, and just make sure that we have something of a defense no matter what we're looking at. And that's maybe as good as I can get, and I continue to retract down here, largely because some of those important hexes are held by units that we might have to withdraw. So it really is trying to peel back and save and hold as long as possible. We're going to go to the cup again, and this time we draw the mover combat. Now, I think I need to do combat here. There's a couple of places where Movement would be nice to have, but we got to take it while we can get it. And we're going to try to make something happen over here as much as we can. So Allied combat, we could see an assault on Houffalize. We could see uh, further attacks up here. Definitely attacks around here to try to bust something open for Bastogne. And we'll go from there. So I'll take care of those combats, and we'll see what the end result of that looks like. Okay, so after the Allied combat, we actually have seen some events occur here where the Allies are pushing back the Germans. They had some attacks that did force these guys off the river and the bridge, so the Allies have the ability to get across. They did force some units back around here, so you can kind of see Bastogne is within 2 hexes of the Allies. They're going to keep pushing, keep striving to knock them out. We tried to take Houffalize and did not successfully do that, which is a shame. We were awfully close, but could not quite do it. And then in a few other places we tried some basic attacks, and they didn't get very far. But I think we've made enough progress here, and the important thing is now that this front line is basically at or right next to Bastogne rather than this perimeter that the Germans had created. So we are so close. We're so close to being able to force the Germans back, but not quite there yet. So now we have the next chit pulled, which is the German combat chit. It has to be combat. So what can the Germans do at this point? Are there any combats even worthwhile attempting? Oof. Not really. I mean, I think that's the reality that we're dealing with, is not really. The other thing, we can do a 1 hex move with armor units on a combat shit like this, but I usually don't find any reason to do that because you still have to watch out for Zocs and everything else. And it just happens right now that combat by itself right now just doesn't do much for us. If we tried to attack over here, 11 to 9, be 1-to-1 odds, maybe we'd push somebody back because they would for sure use artillery here. The Allies would, so it'd be 11 to 9, and okay, so that is actually a retreat result. So these guys would do that. That's one good thing. But I'm not sure it makes sense to attack anywhere else, honestly. It would be... Yeah, I don't think it makes any sense to attack anywhere else. We could maybe go up here. That would be, gosh, 15 to 4, which would be really 15 to 8. Not worth it. Not worth it. Nope, I think that's the only attack that the Germans try. They can bounce these guys back a little bit. That's good enough for the moment. And then we'll let the rest of the chits come up. So German supply, no impact there. Nothing crazy to look at. Everyone's still in supply. So this guy's looking a little dicey. And then the final move being reinforcements from the Allies, which I think what we said we would have them basically up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or well, I guess they couldn't get that far. It would be 1, 2, 3 and a half, and that's as far as they could go using motorized units, I guess. It's fine. They're just working their way up the chain, and that would be it for turn 10. So here's the question: do we go all out and we try to finish this series in this video? Let me stop recording and figure out how long a video this would be, and we'll make a decision. Yeah, I think we're coming in close to 45 some minutes long, so this makes a good place to stop. So this will be turns 9 and 10, and then we'll do turns 11 and 12 in the next video, which will be the finale. And we'll see if the Allies will have been able to crack into Bastogne and Houffalize. They're probably not going to get into Saint-Vith at this point. And I've probably, misused some of my best third corps units with armor stuck down here. They should have been up here. I can think of all sorts of things. That will be in the post-mortem video where I can critique myself. I think I've made some poor choices as the Allies at different points in the game, but they're still close to being able to win. So not so bad. We'll have to see how it works. But yeah, there you go, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Keep gaming.